All right, you guys love it when we have on Brooks Austin, the film guy. We try to do it as much as we can. He is with us now. You can follow him on social media at Brooks Austin BA, at Brooks Austin BA. He's the director of recruiting for the On SI Network, and he is the film guy on social media and YouTube. Welcome in. Brooks, how are you today?
I'm doing well. I always love to see who I'm not only like followed by, but who I'm following. And in about 55 minutes, you get Dan Orlovsky. So here we go. We're going to do some college version, I guess, of some smarter ball knowledge talk, I guess. But Dan probably going to take the cake in about 50 minutes.
Don't downplay you.
No, come on,
you at least are silver medalists today because we got Big Earl coming up later on. And unless you play the guitar, yeah, you're gonna be behind Big Earl today. He's the best.
I know we're gonna want to get into LSU, Alabama this past week, but randomly, let me ask you about Indiana because Indiana's taken a lot of heat. They're 10-0. They haven't played anybody. They struggle to beat Michigan. I still think Michigan's got a really good defense. Teams that win championships, and I'm not saying they're going to win a championship, but even those teams that do have one or two struggles per year. It's just the way it goes in college football. When you watch Indiana, and just from my layman perspective, watching them early on this season, it seemed like this was a team that didn't miss assignments. They played great team football and just – they were coached so well. When you watch Indiana, what makes them a team that now has an 83% chance to get to a college football playoff?
Yeah, you talked about some of these undefeated teams in years prior winning ugly. Michigan, the national champion last year, had to beat Illinois real ugly in that Big Ten slate last year as well. So it reminded me very similarly of kind of a football game that Michigan played last year. But, I was impressed watching Indiana's win last week against Michigan because they won that football game in a style of play that I didn't necessarily expect Indiana to have, right? They won that game with defense, stopping the run, really, really crowding the box. And I think they held Michigan to 69 rushing yards on 34 attempts. So really playing a brand of football that I didn't necessarily expect Indiana to have. Now, they also had the explosives in that football game offensively when they needed to have them. It was a less than par for the course performance for that Indiana offense since Cignetti's been there, but they came up with the big plays when they needed to, and they were explosive in the moments in that football game when they needed to, and that's kind of been their key offensively, man. They've been relatively efficient, but man, it's the big play strike ability that offense has had underneath Curtis Rourke when he's completely healthy.
Listen, it's easy to compliment Nick Sheridan for the game plan last week against LSU. Especially the Jalen Milroe part. But I thought continuing to try the traditional runs with Justice and Jam continued to allow Milroe to do what he did. When you watched Alabama against LSU, what did you see in that run game?
Yeah, man, when Alabama's fully healthy, and particularly Jalen Milroe's fully healthy, and they have the full capabilities of their run game, they're going to be a tough football team to hold up against on the line of scrimmage. LSU doesn't really have very many impactful football players on the interior of that defensive line, and you really watched it show its ugly head in that football game against Alabama, man. We called it displacement on our channel, right? Alabama's ability to take that front four and take that defensive line for LSU and put them into the lap of those linebackers really created massive amounts of problem in that run game for LSU's defense. And you talked about it, man. The explosive runs might have come from Jalen Milroe, but the consistency in that run game, the 341 yards, a lot of that was, like you mentioned, from traditional run game, Jam Miller and Justice Haynes. And I've been tremendously impressed, I should say, with the blocking ability from not just the offensive line from Alabama, but the buy-in from the tight ends as well. 45, 80, 81, and even Jam Miller, man, they're using that guy as a lead blocker on a lot of those explosive runs that happen on Saturday. So you've got to have a tremendous amount of buy-in from your skill guys on the other side, or, on the outsides of those plays to continue to play with a high level of effort, even when you're only going to drop back and throw it 18 times. And that's what really led me to believe that it was true. You weren't very healthy. Jalen Milroe wasn't very healthy for that 3-game stretch where they really struggled offensively, Missouri, South Carolina, and there was one more game in there where they struggled kind of offensively. Vanderbilt, obviously.
Tennessee.
No, it wasn't Vanderbilt, but nonetheless, they were clearly not healthy because against Tennessee, that's the one it was. I watched you guys drop back Jalen Milroe 27 times in a conventional drop back setting. in just the first half of that football game against Tennessee. That lets me know you don't think your quarterback's very healthy, because we know the best version of this football team is when Jalen Milroe's legs are used and used at a high rate.
Brooks Austin is the film guy. At Brooks Austin BA is where you follow him on social media. Go check out his YouTube channel. Does tremendous work there. And like we ask for you to do for us, subscribe to us, set your alerts so you know when they're there. Give his stuff a thumbs up. He's on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. One thing Alabama did in that game, though, Brooks, and I'm just curious what might have jumped out on tape to you as you watched it, is they were able to take the wide receivers when the game was still in question completely away from LSU. LSU really struggled. Now, Mason Taylor got some catches, but they struggled to get the ball to the wide receivers. Did you see that as something Alabama did well? Was it scheme for LSU that just didn't work? Why was Alabama able to do that, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, they obviously covered really well on Saturday night, but I thought defensively the thing that stood out most for me was just the physicality and the rallying of the football. I will remember that one as the Jahad Campbell football game. I felt like number 11 was all over the field. It wasn't just the strip sacks. It was the open field tackling. It was shutting down the run game. But LSU has really struggled this year, guys, guard to guard. Okay, they're great at tackle. They've got 2 first-round draft picks at tackle, but they really give up a lot of interior pressure, and they really struggle to create any type of lanes in the run game from guard to guard. And that's, in my opinion, why you saw Nussmeier do so much spinning out of the pocket. That's the last thing I want any quarterback not named Jalen Milroe doing, or Michael Vick. I don't want you running backwards. I don't want you running out and around the pocket. I want you to be able to step up through the smoke and be able to deliver, strikes. And there's a lot more breathing room in most traditional pockets up into the pocket, not out and around it. But, man, when you're getting smoked guard to guard, it's really hard to do that. So that was the main takeaway for me. Yeah, they covered them really well, but they made that football team really one-dimensional, and they created a lot of interior pressure from guard to guard. It's going to be really hard to play quarterback when that's the situation that's laid at your feet, literally laid at your feet. You're having offensive linemen put into your lap pretty consistently year-round for Nussmeier, and then that's going to be really, really hard. You can't step up at all, can't really deliver strikes. Everything you feel like's off your back foot. You're going to float a lot of footballs. You're going to be inaccurate. You're going to have moments of, why did you make that decision? Well, Coach, my clock has been sped up really, really quickly today.
What are you seeing with the freshman Ryan Williams? And look, I know defenses know that number 2 is out there now, but over the last month, he's only gone over 4 grabs in one game. His high over the last 4 games is 73 yards receiving. Is it just the fact that defenses are keying more now on number 2?
I don't know. I saw him getting behind LSU defenders on Saturday night. I mean, that was the scary thing for me. Scary thing should be for anybody on Alabama's future schedule is the fact that they hung 42 on LSU at LSU and basically did so without any conventional deep passing game. I mean, they missed Kendrick Law in that football game. They missed Ryan Williams in that football game. There were several opportunities down the field, 40, 50 yards, 60-yard explosive passes that were just missed by a couple of inches, and yet they still put up 42 yards and 42 points and still rush for 341 yards. I think sometimes we can look at these things and they can be kind of cyclical. They can be up and down in terms of performances with just in terms of styles of play. How is the defense going about trying to stop me today? And what am I doing successfully offensively? And I think Ryan Williams even spoke about that this week in his media availability. Like, dude, we're running for 8 yards a clip. Don't worry about getting me the ball. Let's worry about getting the win out of here and going home with a really, really successful offensive performance. And that's real maturity at the wide receiver position, man. But no, when I look at it on tape, and we even showed some on the channel this week, Ryan Williams has very unique top end speed, and he gets to it really quickly. And you add on to that the fact that this guy really understands how to run routes. He's not just a go-go gadget. Like, he's not just a guy that's really, really fast. He's got some like actual refinement to his game already as a 17-year-old. All of those things are what make this guy great. But no, I wouldn't have been going out of my way to make him part of the game plan last week, because you were just absolutely bludgeoning that defense in the run game.
I hate that I can only remember a few movie quotes, and that one of them is "I can't quit you." Georgia, I can't quit Georgia yet. Everybody seems to think they're going to beat Tennessee. How do you break down this Georgia team with Tennessee coming to town?
So we can get into super analysis points, but here's my main analysis point. I picked Alabama to beat Georgia this year on the road because I'm not picking Georgia to beat Alabama until they do it, until you prove me wrong. I'm picking Alabama to beat you. Just something about it. I feel the same exact way about particularly Kirby Smart versus Josh Heupel's offense until they show that they can come in or even host Georgia and run the football effectively and consistently like they have against every other SEC opponent. I don't feel comfortable about picking Tennessee to beat Georgia. But in terms of I don't want to necessarily quit Georgia. I don't necessarily feel ready to give up on Georgia. Like, Georgia's doing things right now, or I should say failing to do things right now that Georgia does consistently year in, year out. It's why they've been so great, right? They block really well. They tackle really well. They cover really well. They don't bust assignments. They're doing all of those things at an inconsistent rate right now. They're not blocking consistently. They're busting assignments on offense and on defense. They're not tackling open field defenders very well or open field ball carriers well right now. So I understand why people have some skepticism about Georgia going into this football game because they haven't played up to their own Georgia standards so far this year. But it ultimately boils down to this. When you play Tennessee, can you stop their run game? And in years past, that's always been it. But this year, even more paramount because they don't have the ability consistently to hit their deep shots. I've been flabbergasted by the amount of times I've turned the tape on of Tennessee's offense this year and seen people dedicate as many bodies as they have to the box to stop the run. Historically, against Josh Heupel, that's been a death wish. If you put too many guys in the box, they're hitting 60-yard explosives. That 2022 year, they led the nation in every single explosive metric that you could possibly have because of that. When you tried to stop the run, they murdered you in the back end. They have an inability to do that right now. Teams are almost daring them to do so. My question is, they're playing an opponent this year that's never had to dedicate extra bodies to the box to stop their runs. So it's kind of a bad matchup historically for Tennessee.
Brooks Austin is with us, the film guy at Brooks Austin BA on social media. If I gave you the magic ability to fix only one thing on Georgia's offense, you can only fix one thing, where would be the most efficient use of that magic ability?
Honestly, like we could talk about like they lead the nation in drop passes. Like that's kind of
okay.
It's kind of not good.
Yeah.
But this hasn't been the Georgia standard from an offensive protection standpoint in pass protection, and even in the run game, man, they're not creating holes enough to create explosive runs. And I'm gonna tell you what. If they were, Trevor Etienne would be getting to them. That's the misconception about maybe Trevor's performance this year. Like if you watch number one's tape, you're going to draft that guy really, really highly. If you look at his box score, you're like, where's the production, man? Where are the explosive runs? Well, they're in the offensive line's inability to consistently perform. And you look at Carson Beck's performances this year, and you're like, man, he sure is turning the football over a lot. Well, yeah, this is an offensive line that allowed just 7 sacks last year. I think they allowed 5 last week alone. So, like, this offensive line is not playing at the rate that they were in years past, and they're banged up. They certainly are, but it's also a byproduct of I just don't think they're as talented as they have been in years past. Since I've covered this football team and started covering them in 2019, they've averaged a first-round draft pick at the tackle position. They don't have one of those right now starting for them.
Yeah, I mean, it showed up Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, 71 out there on the left. I mean, you're going to leave your left tackle on an island a lot. You can't give him a ton of help, and he was on an island, and it showed.
No, it definitely did. And I mean, it's a tough matchup for anybody. Ole Miss is, right? I think they got 3 first-round caliber football players in Walter Nolan, Princely Umamilan, and Sutarian Perkins. But, yeah, I'm with you, man. Like, at what point are you going to start chipping? At what point are we going to start helping that guy out? It got to a point in that football game where Georgia was like, all right, here's our game plan. We're going to run a bunch of toss sweeps. We're going to run a bunch of play action rollout, and we're going to run a bunch of quick screens. You know what that's screaming to the entire audience and everybody in the stadium? Guys, we can't block you today, and we've given up on trying to block you today.
That is Brooks Austin. He is the film guy at Brooks Austin BA. Go watch his stuff on YouTube, on social media. daily, and make sure you subscribe, set your alerts so you know when he is live. Brooks, it is always fun, man. We greatly appreciate the time.
Appreciate you, boys. Y'all have a good show.
All right, buddy. Take care. Brooks with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.